Well, hello. My name is Josiah Lee, and today is April 16th, and I'm starting the Justice Revolution book by Barry Sullivan, and about to, well, I'm actually on the second day, but I ran out of time and didn't film the stuff from day one that I was able to pull out of this. So I'm going to go ahead and share from day one. Today's subject was child soldiers around the world, and we learned quite a few staggering statistics about this. But I'll move on to actions. Well, let me back up a second. I was sitting in a meeting yesterday, 2 days ago now, and I was challenged in this study to give it everything, not to shorten myself of a blessing, or to shorten what I can do to help, but to go after all of it, to earnestly pursue, to do my best. So hopefully, as I look back over the weeks, I'll have held to that, not falling away from that in any way. I thought this was rather interesting, going to the assignment here. We learn in our informational that these children and these child soldiers are forcibly taken from their parents, with no warning, no heads up, no goodbyes, no nothing. They're just forcibly taken out of their homes as the Israelite babies were taken out. I'm sorry, the Hebrew babies were taken out in Egypt around the time of Moses' birth. But at the end of this assignment, it says, now, quoting, "Now, how does this make you feel? And when you compare what you are giving up today with what those parents have given up, what comes to your mind?" And I kind of chuckled a little bit, because thinking about what these parents are losing and comparing to what I'm committing to give up for the next 21 days is nothing. I mean, nothing I can give up can compare to losing a child, potentially forever. So I figured that wasn't a good enough answer, and I still had to choose to give up something. So from this day forward, for the next 21 days, I, Josiah Lee, so solemnly swear with this hand, to give up all meat and Chick-fil-A, which I know sounds kind of funny, but I'm there rather often, and for some of you that may not be too difficult to go to Chick-fil-A, but they serve this very delectable treat called a milkshake. It's like a cup this big, full of heavenly wonders almost. I'm not so certain that when we get to heaven they won't serve us cookies and cream milkshakes from Chick-fil-A with a cup of waffle fries. So that's going to be interesting. So, moving on to the debrief. We start out in 1 Samuel 8:10 through 18, and we read a passage where Samuel is about to anoint the first king. Actually, the people of Israel have said, we don't want judges anymore. We don't want prophets anymore. We want a king. All the other nations around us have kings, and we want to be like them. We don't like the system that you've chosen for us, God. You have set up. So appoint us a king. And Samuel goes and speaks to God and says, God, what do you want me to tell them? What do you want me to do? And God says, do what they've asked. They've not rejected you, Samuel. They've rejected me and my systems and my ways, my perfect way. But tell them what they get and what they'll have. If well, let's turn there, actually. Let's look at that. I wasn't planning on doing this, but so sorry. It says, what will the king do? And this will kind of paraphrase the next few verses. It says, he will take your children, he will take your men, and appoint them in his army. It says, for his horsemen and his chariots, appoint him captains. He will take your tithes, he will take your harvest, he will take your women, he will take everything that is valuable to you, and he will use it for himself. He will take your sheep, and you, after all this is done, you will cry out. You will cry out because your king, which you have chosen, that you have asked for, has done all this. And the Lord will not hear you in that day because of your iniquities. That's a very sad. Actually, the sadder part of it is not that this would happen, but that they knew this would happen, and they still chose to have a king. God said, this is what's going to happen. And they said, that's okay, God. We don't mind that. We want what we want. Let's have it that way. So, moving on to Psalms 11, verse 4 and 5. The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids try the children of men. The Lord trieth the righteousness, but the wicked and him that loveth violence, his soul hateth. The Lord hates violence. He not only hates this violence, but he hates this sin that is committed. It's not... The word hate is a very strong word. The wicked, God trieth the righteous, but the wicked in him that loveth violence, his soul he hateth. That's very strong. 141 through 3. Yeah. I didn't really have anything to add here. I mean, Well, actually, I will add something here. We notice when we come into affliction, we notice people cry out to God, just like the people would when we look in 1 Samuel. He said, "You'll cry out to me because of your affliction." Here in Psalm 140, it's a little bit different. It's the same thing where David is crying out. He says, "Lord, deliver me." The difference is God hears him. Why? Because it's not his sin. It's the sins of others that he is being persecuted by. According to these scriptures, what do you think are the root causes of the violence we see in places like Uganda? If this study keeps asking questions like this, I have a feeling all my first answers will be the same, and I would have to say sin would be the root cause of the violence, but what that boils down to specifically is our specific rebellion against God, our saying, "God, your way's okay, but I want my way." That's what sin is. I mean, that's a pretty good definition of sin, choosing our way above God's way, deciding that, well, I'm smarter than God, I'm wiser than God, I know what will work out, So, second question. What did today's assignment do to make you more aware about this justice issue? Our sin affects more than us. When we put up idols, when we decide that our way is better, going back to 1 Samuel, when they said, "God, our way is better," it didn't affect them. It didn't affect just their generation, because many kings after came, and Saul, the first king, turned wicked, and the exception was a godly king. The majority of the kings that ruled Israel were not godly. There's many times or a couple times where it says, "Such and such did evil in the sight of the Lord, and his son did more evil than his father, and his son did more evil than his father." So if the first of that line did evil in the sight of the Lord, how much greater was that by the third generation? So I keep in remembrance, your sin doesn't just affect you. My sin doesn't just affect me. It influences those around us, and those we come into contact with. But it also affects our future generations. The decisions we make today affect our tomorrows. So I hope you are encouraged by that. You see the blessing by that, and are challenged by that. So I remind you, seek after holiness, righteousness before God. Determined to give your all. To do your best, to run. Run with endurance. Present yourself a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Don't settle for second. Reach for the higher calling of God in Christ Jesus. Pursue holiness. Do what is right before God. Give it your all. So, this is Josiah again. and pursue godliness.